Middle Ages is roughly the period from around the 18th century to around 1350. Okay? The Enlightenment period is really mid-1600s to mid-1700s. Does anyone happen to know the name of the period between the Middle Ages and the Enlightenment? I'll give you a hint. It translates roughly as rebirth. Yes, Michaela.
Renaissance?
Perfect. Renaissance. Okay, so we're dealing with 3 literary periods. The works we're going to be reading, we're starting with Beowulf. Okay, and that was written in the 10th century. I'm going to abbreviate the titles for now. Okay, so we have Beowulf. It's by an anonymous author, so we don't know who wrote it. The second work we have is Dante's Inferno. Okay, Dante's Inferno he started writing it around 1302. It wasn't published until 1323. The next work, one I think we're all familiar with, is Shakespeare's Hamlet. Okay, originally performed in 1603. Then we move on to a work that's quite contemporary with Hamlet, Cervantes' Don Quixote. It's a long one. We're not going to read it all. Don't worry. Okay? Then we leave sort of the literary genre and we go on to a philosophical essay by Descartes, published in 1637. This is called Discourse on Method. And the last work we'll be dealing with is from Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travels. Okay, one thing I'd like to point out is that we're dealing with a variety of genres. We have an epic in the poem Beowulf. We have sort of a long narrative poem written in the Italian when we move on to the Inferno. We have drama with Hamlet, one of the first European novels in Don Quixote. Then we have a philosophical essay with Discourse on Method. And Gulliver's Travels is interesting because some people call it a novel, others call it a travel narrative, whereas most critics agree that it's a satire. So it kind of sort of is difficult to classify in terms of genre. I'd like to get a show of hands. Raise your hand if you've read one or more of these texts before. Okay, about half the class.
At the protein level, so we've all learned about alternative splicing. Say, due to cocaine exposure, there's some sort of change that causes a genetic change, the change at the genetic level that changes alternative splicing, so a completely new channel is formed. And say, for example, this channel only opens at -50. So you have the same exact effect as you had before. Threshold changes because you have changed the molecular structure. So plasticity can happen both at the threshold level and the level of individual electrical thresholds, and also at the protein level that can alter how often action potentials happen and to what extent they happen in the nervous system. Great. Any questions up until this point? Yes?
So isn't the third protein variability directly linked to changing the overall thresholds? Because how can they change the threshold without changing the protein themselves?
Maybe we'll talk about that more. Yeah. There's a whole mechanism for that. I'm sure we'll work it. Anything else? Great. So, we have talked about how a chemical signal that is received at the dendrites can cause an action potential.